Hello everybody, you're listening to the Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. And we catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Oak Shed for a weekly album review. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for the Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we're repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. It all helps. You can also reach out to me here at the studio on dane.cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain at wickhamsound.org.uk. And I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with MP3s they'd like to share, people who might be good guests for the show. Don't hesitate to get in touch. So this week we are chatting to the Skadinals and we're going to have some tunes by them as well. But before we do that, we are going to head over to the Rhylight Zone for the latest instalment of The Possession of Daphne Degamensi, which is a horror short story by myself, Dane Cobain, from my upcoming collection, Snowbound.
We stopped off to pick up a couple of cups of takeout coffee and then strolled together through Belgrade Ormani. For a while we talked about school, the weather and anything else we could think of, but even though she wasn't there, Daphne had a hold over us that was impossible to resist. And besides, we had a conversation to finish. Did I tell you about when she crashed my party? Muji asked. I shook my head, my eyes still focused on the trees that lined the path in front of me. It was my 18th birthday, Muja explained. I was in the year below you and so you'd already left for university, otherwise I would have invited you. Don't worry, I said, I'm not offended. I didn't invite Daphne either, Muja said. It didn't even occur to me. We hadn't seen each other for a couple of years. Besides, it was just going to be a half a dozen of us girls watching movies and doing face masks. None of us drank, and so it wasn't exactly supposed to be a wild night in, but then the phone rang. I think I can tell where this is going. It was Daphne, Muja confirmed. She said she knew there was a party happening and that she was coming over. How did she know that? She was your cousin, I reminded her, and you were turning 18. It wouldn't have been hard for her to put the pieces together. Maybe, Muja said, but I don't think she knew when my birthday was, and I'd never had a party before. We hadn't spoken for years, and then she showed up out of the blue at my party and ruined the whole night. What did she do? What didn't she do? Muja asked. She sighed. To begin with, it seemed like we might have a decent night, but then she started getting weird. She talked about witches and fairies, gods and goblins. She was obsessed with the children of Iblis, Dasim, Awa, Misut, Thabar and Zalampur. And then she backed Faria into a corner and asked her, how long has your mother been cheating on your father? I whistled as I inhaled sharply and flashed a glance at Muja, who had her face turned slightly away from me as though she didn't want me to see her. Yeah, Muja said. You can imagine how the rest of the night went from there. It gets weirder though. I spoke to Faria a couple of weeks later and she told me she'd confronted her mother and demanded to know the truth. Daphne was right. Now Faria's parents live separate lives and sleep in separate rooms, although they're still married in the eyes of Allah, and the law I suppose. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I want to know what you think, Muja replied. You know, if we add together the seizures, the visions, the Ouija board, do you think she could be, you know, possessed? I asked. My voice sounded unnaturally loud, especially amidst the relative quiet of the forest, and it was followed by the fluttering of a dozen pairs of wings as birds took flight away from us. No, that's not possible. I mean, demons aren't real, are they? She had no answer for that. I travelled back to England after Eid, but I thought about Daphne and the story that Muja had told me every day, especially when the lights were out and I was trying to sleep. Erdem and I were engaged to be married, and so we spent much of our time going around the houses, visiting various family members and handing over invitations or receiving written RSVPs, which we were saving to put inside a scrapbook. There wasn't much time for visiting old friends, but that didn't stop them from coming to see me. One afternoon, while my parents were at work and I had the house to myself, there was a knock at the door. I peeked out through the spy hole and saw two familiar faces on the other side of the glass, although I hadn't seen one of them since I was a teenager. Muja looked exactly like she had when I'd seen her in Bacacor and Merquez, and I was pretty sure she was wearing the same dress, but Daphne had changed completely. She was no longer the beautiful, vivacious teen I'd known at school, the one that all the boys wanted and all the girls wanted to be. She'd lost a lot of weight, and it wasn't as though she'd had much going spare to begin with. Her face was particularly gaunt, and her eyes had sunk into her sockets with big black bags beneath them. Her pupils were so big that it looked as though she didn't have irises, and to begin with, I wondered if she'd taken something. But it soon became clear that if she was high on anything, it was life. And she wasn't even high on that. So, are you going to invite us in? Muja asked, looking pointedly at me and then her cousin. "Sure," I replied, pushing the door open and gesturing for them to follow me inside. "I'll fix us something to drink. I think there's still some tea in the Skadinals." I led Daphne and Muja through to the kitchen where they sat down at the table. Daphne still hadn't said a word, and Muja and I were making small talk about the weather because we were in the middle of a heat wave and there were rumours of a drought that would affect the water supply. I just started pouring out the tea when Daphne opened her mouth for the first time, but it was far from a friendly hello. "People suffered here," she said. And she was right. I've never believed in ghosts or the spirit world, but there was something eerie about the way that Daphne was talking. Her eyes had rolled back in their sockets as though she was having another one of her seizures, but when I glanced at Muja, she simply shrugged. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I see corpses," Daphne replied, "hundreds of them lined up on metal trays in a morgue." "You might be onto something there," I murmured, not sure whether I was talking to Daphne, Muja or myself. Perhaps I wasn't talking to anyone.
That was the latest instalment of The Possession of Daphne Degamensi by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Broken Colours with Not Giving In.
Sometimes it feels like I'm giving up. Just pack a suitcase and never look back. Spark a cigarette and hit the road with the shimmer of the sunlight and the ocean glow. Come on now. This isn't the way I thought things would turn out to be. I'm still moving forward, baby, but I'm dragging both feet. Can't you see the mess I'm in? Can't you tell how I feel? I'm losing everyone I hold dear while I'm climbing out that hill. I'm still standing. I ain't giving in. You can knock me down and I get up again. Life is so demanding with everything we got going on and all this madness. We need to stay strong. Stay strong. It's been a testing few months, my friend. You question all that you want. I see the light in the distance, baby, and I need to stay strong. 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 I'm still standing. I ain't giving in. Knock me down and I get up again. Life is so demanding with everything we got going on and all this madness. We need to stay strong. Stay strong. Stay strong. I'm still standing, and I ain't giving in. You can knock me down, and I get up again. Life is so demanding with everything we got going on and all this madness. We need to stay strong. Stay strong. Stay strong.
What's this? This is a heavy, heavy monster sound. The nastiest sound around. So if you're coming off the street and you're beginning to feel the heat, well, listen, Buster, you better start to move your feet to the rockinest, rock steady beat of the Skadinals. Skadinals! One step beyond! One step beyond! One step beyond! One step beyond! One step
That was One Step Beyond by the Skadinals, and before that we had Not Giving In by Broken Colours. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be joined by the band themselves, or at least part of the band. We are chatting to Nick and Colin from the Skadinals.
You both know my traditional opening question is, what was the last book that you read and what did you think of it?
Last book I read was a book called Flash Drive, which I finished this week, which was a sort of a kind of murder mystery, kind of whodunit type thing. It wasn't bad. It's one of my, I use BookBub, which sort of recommends sort of free books on Amazon. So I tend to sort of randomly grab books and stick them on the Kindle and read them when I get around to it. So yeah, Flash Drive was the last one I read.
Awesome.
And I just read Lee Thompson's biography from Madness.
Oh, cool. Well, that's very fitting. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, that's why I was reading it, actually, and it's an interesting character. Well, all of them are, and I'm currently reading The Story of Madness. So, very different to any other band, I think. in
Yeah.
lots of ways.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, and that leads us nicely into talking about the Skadinals today. So a good place to start would be to ask who's in the Skadinals and what instruments do they play?
Okay, I'll take that. So basically, we're a five-piece. We have Neil on drums, we have Kev on bass, Martin on guitar, Nick on sax, and myself on lead vocals. That's not the original lineup, but it's been the lineup since about October last year.
And we have a phantom keyboard player for one number.
Yeah, we use the evil of a backing track for about 16 bars.
What song's that?
Must Be Love, because it's such an iconic sort of piano intro at the beginning. You know, you can't really replicate that on other instruments. So, I mean, it's quite unusual for a ska band not to have a keyboard.
Yeah,
And we sort of, our arrangements kind of like the sax and the guitar have to kind of fill in those gaps, and so our sax player is our harmonica stroke trumpet stroke trombone stroke sax stroke
Anything you blow, basically.
yeah. Anything that's not bass and drums, it's down to guitar and sax to work it out.
cool, awesome. And how did the band come about? Colin, I think we talked a little bit about this in our call, but
well, basically, we started a couple of years ago. A guitarist called Daryl, who's not with us anymore. Well, he's not in the band anymore. He'd basically been playing for a ska band over in Swindon, and for whatever reason, he decided he didn't want to do that anymore. So he decided he wanted to start his own ska band. So he had his mate Kev, who's still in our bassist, have been playing together on and off in bands about 20 years. So he brought Kev on board. He then contacted myself through like a classified ads because I'd been doing a couple of. I've never been in a band, but I'd been doing the rock project stuff and quite like the idea of being in a band. So I stuck what I had in the classifieds. So he got in touch with me and said, "Do you want to come and do a ska band?" And it sounded interesting. So I thought, give it a go. Our sax player at the time, Steve, had again never been in a band. He was more of a sort of learning sax, and he's more of a sort of jazz-based sax player. So he was very good at ad-libbing, not so good at learning stuff, which is so. And the trouble with this sort of music is the riffs are so iconic. You can't just go off on a tangent. You've got to kind of hit those like famous riffs. Now, the instrumental, you can do what you want. And then, so our first couple of rehearsals, it was just the four of us, and we were playing to a drum machine. And then Neil, our drummer, who Darryl knew because his other half worked in school with him, hadn't played drums for about 10 years, but had played ska before. So he sort of dragged him in, and he sort of dusted down his drum kit, and off we went. So it's been 3 months basically in a ska boot camp, trying to learn it all. Had our first gig in July. I think we had something like 26 songs in our first gig, which was only about 2 40-minute sets. So we had to kind of like waffle it and extend some of the instrumentals just to pad it out. I think on our first gig, the landlady wasn't very happy because we literally did our 26 songs and got off. We didn't even do an encore or anything because we had nothing left to play. I think we're up to about 37 songs these days, and we're sort of doing nearer to an hour a set now. So we started there and went really well. We got a nice little following. Apart from myself, everybody else was Oxford based, so we tended to do most of our gigging up there. And then I got a couple of gigs down here, like the Bell in Prince of Risborough, because I go there regularly for the open mics, and so I know the landlord. So he loves ska, so he got us in. And then we did it kind of was going really well, and then we hit the Whitney Festival a year ago, last June, and basically we got rained off on the. We're literally standing on stage ready to go, and they flooded the DX box on stage, got flooded, and the PA went off, and we lost half an hour, and we lost our slot, got kicked off, and it kind of all went downhill from it was kind of unrelated, but it wasn't. And then our guitarist then broke his wrist and couldn't play, and our sax player announced that he was relocating to Devon, so he's going to be leaving the band in September. And so we went from like going everything flying to suddenly having no guitarist and no sax player. Fortunately, Martin, who was in a band called the Inflatables, who are kind of pretty much the number one ska band in Oxfordshire, and he hadn't played for them for about a year, and he contacted us out about the blue and offered to stand in for the sort of gigs while our guitarist got back on his feet. So he played 4 or 5 gigs with us. In the meantime, we started advertising on Band Mix, and I found Nick. And Nick, as you know, I was in Straight 8, so he didn't want to commit, or was unsure about fully committing, because obviously the other band had to come first for him. So he said he'll trial it till the end of the year. And then basically our guitarist then decided that he had other health issues and he couldn't really commit to all the gigs we had going forward. So he decided to leave the band. Luckily, Martin said he was enjoying it so much, he became a full-time member. And then come Christmas, after trialing us out, Nick decided that he was thoroughly enjoying himself and wanted to stay with the band. And that's been the lineup ever since. And it's gone from strength to strength, really, then. We played because Nick is obviously based down sort of in the Wickham area as well. We started doing more and more gigs, not more, but probably about half and half now, the gigs we do down here and the gigs we do up in Oxford, which is quite good because it's 2 very different audiences. So we're not getting stale. People aren't getting sick of seeing us because we're sort of traveling sort of up and down between those 2 locations. So that's working well for us.
So I can jump in on how I joined. So I belong to a thing called Band Mix, and you may be familiar with it. It's kind of a contact thing for musicians. I'm only on it because that's where I've got singers for Straight 8 for. But as part of signing up, you have to put a profile down. So obviously put down as a saxophonist. not looking for anything else, and not expecting anything else. And then I get a phone call. Well, I got an email out of the blue from Colin. Give him a call, and he said, "Oh, we're playing in. I think it was the brickmakers or the bricklayers in Aylesbury." So I thought, tomorrow, why don't you pop along? So I thought, well, I'll pop along. If they're no good, I'll just sneak off. But they happened to be really good. Really enjoyed it, to the point that my wife Linda was with me, and she got so excited she broke a glass, not in a fit of pique, but just bouncing around so much. And of course, of a similar vintage, which helps. And the stuff that I grew up with, and curiously by the same token, I'm principally a baritone sax player. That's what I played most of the time. I've always wanted to play the tenor, but never really done that. I've done it occasionally. I had an old tenor, which wasn't much good, but just prior to this, probably about 6 months earlier, I thought, well, I really want to play the tenor, so I'll buy myself a decent one, and I was just playing it at home really, and really enjoying playing something different, and it all kind of fitted into place really. So I get to play my new shiny saxophone and stuff that I really love. So I still obviously still loved playing with straight eight as well, but it was doing something different. Far removed from what I was doing before. So I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. These guys are really solid. First thing I noticed when to see them was, Kev, the bass player, really had all those bass riffs off, and the band just looked and sounded great, and got everybody up and dancing. I thought, this is worth a try. So putting a bit of spade work at home with writing out the saxophone parts, and here we are. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and that kind of builds into a question I wanted to ask that I think you've answered a little bit there, Nick. But that's why is it that you play ska as opposed to any other genre, say, like, for example, rock and roll? And I guess, Colin, you've mentioned this a little bit as well in terms of how the band formed. But it certainly sounds like you're both very much sort of ska converts as well. So what is it about the genre that you enjoy?
It's great energy, high energy, up tempo dance music. So when you're playing it in a pub, it's just people can't help but dance to it, and it's a great feeling to sort of you're in a pub and the whole pub is bouncing and everybody's dancing around, enjoying themselves.
And those that don't dance sing along.
Yeah, that's and it's just, and it just feels like a big party, and it's just so it's just thoroughly rewarding, I suppose, to play. I mean, coming into this, I was a big Madness fan. I had all their albums and sort of been to see them God knows how many times. I wasn't really that big into the specials or I sort of knew the famous ones, but I found it's just infectious, and it's just it's great fun to play. And there was an element, I think, initially as well of putting myself out of my comfort zone, because I've never been a front man before. I haven't got a guitar to hide behind anymore, and B, that just there's elements of it which is kind of, there's an attitude about it which is something I've had to find and had to sort of like project, which isn't naturally me. So there was an element of just a challenge of actually putting myself out of my comfort zone, and the fact it's so different to what I do, say, so when I play my solo stuff and what have you. So yeah, we just love it. I mean, also Nick, when he came along, so our old sax player was a great sax player, but he couldn't read music. He did everything by ear. You could hum him any tune and he could play it straight back at you. But because Nick reads and writes music and was used to arranging stuff for straight A, so we said for the first rehearsal, well, I gave him a list of our set and said, pick 4 songs and we'll do those. And he turned up first rehearsal and said, well, I've done 10. And second rehearsal, well, I've done 15 now. And because he could read the music and play it, he didn't have to necessarily have memorized it or learned it. He could just actually look at the music. So, I mean, that was brilliant, which basically Nick got up to speed with all our songs really, really quickly. And same with Martin, he'd been playing this stuff 30 years. So he just came in and from day one could play every single song. Yeah,
so just with Martin, you just don't have any doubts that he's going to come in the right places, and he's just fantastic guitarist. You just know he's going to be there. There's no anxiety. Martin's going to be on the ball, and that's been great.
And he's grown into it, because when he first started playing with us and he was just helping us out, I think he didn't want to step on any toes. He wasn't auditioning to be in the band. He was genuinely just helping us out. And I think that now he's a full-time member, and with Nick as well, the pair of them are starting to bring their own personalities to what they're doing, and they're adding little bits and the arrangements are changing.
The thing is, Colin, Martin and I are at the short side of the band. So if you'd see us on stage, I mean, Colin and Kevin, they're huge. They're huge compared to me and Martin. So we got to do something on our side of the stage.
We've just recently, I think now Nick, Martin, and Kev have all got radio plugs for their instruments, so they can be a bit more mobile. So on a bigger stage, I mean, so in the Bellevue last week, for example, so Nick sometimes would actually come off the stage and actually play a solo in the audience, and so you start to bring the audience in and make it more of an event, which is really nice to sort of see. And Martin's starting to come out of himself, and actually even he's starting to sort of dance a bit and move around the stage a bit, and so the whole thing is becoming a much more of a show, I guess.
You're listening to the Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with Nick and Colin from the Skadinals, and this is the Skadinals with It Must Be Love.
I never thought I'd miss you half as much as I do. And I never thought I'd feel this way, the way I feel about you. As soon as I wake up every night, every day, I know that you are me to take the blues away. It must be love, love, love. It must be love, love, love. How can it be that we can say so much without words? Bless you and bless me, bless the bees and the birds. I've got to be near you every night, every day. I couldn't be happy any other way. It must be love, love, love. It must be love, love, love.
Thank you. We've been the Skadinals. That was the Skadinals with their version of It Must Be Love. You're listening to the Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for me to be rejoined in conversation now by this week's guest, who are, bit of both, the Skadinals.
And something that Colin and I talked about recently was the way that, you know, the clothes that Colin wears and the shades are an important part of his kind of his stage presence. And I wondered if you have anything similar, Nick. Like, do you have any sort of clothes that you wear or routines that you go through to sort of get into character before you play a show?
Yeah. So I've gone a little bit steampunk. It's the whole thing, you know, like most performers. I hate being me on the stage, so it's got to be, you know, something to hide behind. So I've gone for a bowler hat with a pair of steampunk glasses over the top and a long Crombie, and that's the look I've gone for. Which you know, it's different, but yeah, you've got to. You know, got to project something. The only trouble is I'd put I had a houndstooth check one on at Whitney Festival, and it's new. And when you get hot and sweaty, it smells like an old dog. So got to work on that. But that was possibly not a great choice for summer gigs. But we'll see. But yeah, you've got to. You know, it's about the show. I learned that with Straight 8. You know, with Straight 8, we play with the bright coloured suits. It makes people smile to start with. If you've got people smiling, you're halfway there. What I like with these guys, I think it's a strap line I saw. I don't know whether it's on our Facebook page or what it is, but we get the party started, and I think that really sums it up because it's upbeat music, and everybody knows the songs. You know, and at Whitney Festival, I thought was great as there was young kids joining in and singing and dancing around to it, you know, and it's music from 40 years ago, 35, 40 years ago, really. But it's still relevant and people love it. It's upbeat. It's fun.
Yeah. And how do you keep the energy going? You mentioned how it gets sort of sweaty on stage. How do you keep the energy going after, again, 2-hour long sets where you've been dancing around? You've been saying, you know, Nick, you've been out in the crowd playing your sax. Colin, you've been bopping up and down to the music. So how do you keep that energy going at the end of a long gig?
You bounce off the crowd. I mean, the hardest gigs we find is when you're not getting much from the crowd, because then it becomes a slog, because you're sort of trying to sort of. It's hard to be up tempo and high energy when you're getting nothing back. But typically, I would say our second set is normally pretty much everyone's dancing from the outset. So by the time we get to the end of a gig, everybody's dancing, everybody's singing along. So you just feed off that, and the adrenaline carries you through. I mean, I pay for it the next day.
I was going to say, I bet you're sore in the morning.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just.
Colin cheats. He's got 2 suits.
Yeah. It's costing me a fortune in dry cleaning bills at the moment.
You're probably keeping them in business, Colin.
Yeah, I probably am. They actually know me by name now. It's like, nice. Is it the blue one or the red one? Sort today, then Carl. It's like,
Cool. And what are some of the songs that you guys perform? You know, give us a hint of what we can expect if we come and see you.
So basically, it's sort of madness specials to beat Bad Manners. So it's My Girl, House of Fun, Baggy Trousers, Must Be Robert Cairo, One Step Beyond, and then things like Too Much Too Young and Gangsters and Woolly Bully and Monkey Man. And then beat ones, we've got things like Mirror in the Bathroom, Too Nice to Talk To. And then you've got Special Brew and Woolly Bully from Bad Manners.
There's a couple of ones we put in recently which are possibly less well known, but they're dancey tunes. One is the In London Violence by Bad Manners, which has gone down really well, and it's the Toasters, isn't it? The other one, what's it called?
Two-Tone Army.
Two-Tone Army. And they're all, again, of a similar tempo and dancey. And you put those in the set, and once people are up and dancing, they'll just carry on.
Yeah.
Also, because it's difficult, because basically it's one of these things, because we tend to focus on the two tones. That's what that late 70s sort of two-tone era, where it's slightly more punky kind of ska, as opposed to the more classic sort of Jamaican-y reggae type of ska. So but it's actually, two-tone was only around for a couple of years, so there's not a vast catalogue to kind of pull from. So what you tend to find is every ska band you see will play the same dozen songs, guaranteed.
Yeah.
So it's we're trying to find. So we do Too Nice to Talk To Now, which I've not seen another ska band do, and so the Inland of Violence and the Toasters one, I've not seen another ska band do those either. So it's nice to have a couple of kind of unique selling point kind of songs that I think people that are, because I think people that come and see us probably go and see a lot of ska bands, and so it's nice, I think, for them to hear a song they haven't heard for a while or don't usually hear.
I think some of the ones we do as well. I mean, having to have it sit down and write out the sax parts. Some of them are really, really complex and clever. I mean, the beat are very different. They don't seem to have two verses the same length. You might not realise that, but when you actually go to write it down, and Madness sticking odd bars here and there, which just completely catch you out. There's an odd 2/4 bar will appear, or in the middle of a song, and it only happens once. Really, really clever stuff, but that real hook there. So, from my point of view, I've really enjoyed discovering that. You like the song, but then you realise, oh, that's probably why I like it, because it does something different there, and it really grabs you in. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I suppose as well, when you talk about like the audiences you have, you've got your ska fans, and then maybe just your people who are just out on just a night out or whatever. But I suppose as well, there's like that third audience of the musicians like yourselves who come along, not really know what to expect. And then, they probably find it quite interesting to listen to you guys play, to sort of pick up on some of those things like you were saying, Nick, but also to see how you've changed some of the arrangements around so that you can kind of cover bits on guitar or on sax that were originally on other instruments and stuff. So I suppose there's something there for musicians who come along to see you guys as well.
Quite bizarrely, I'm using foot pedals. So I've the reason I've done it is partly playing on the stages that we do. We can't always get good foldback, and when you're playing a saxophone, you need to be able to hear yourself. So I found a choruser pedal. I could actually take two feeds off that, one to the PA and one to an inner ear monitor. So I've always got something in my ear that I can actually hear the saxophone, though it's nice to have external monitors as well to not push too hard. And then things like, because I'm the only horn player, and we're doing best part of 2 hours of music, it's quite tiring. So I've got used a guitar boost pedal for solos, just so I don't have. Well, I was going through reeds like nobody's business because you're pushing hard for the solos, and it was very tiring. So that's taking that off a bit. And then for things like Inner London Violence, I found a synth pedal. Which actually synthesizes the organ at the beginning. So it's been quite fun learning that. But you do get a few raised eyebrows if you're using someone else's PA, and you say, "Oh yes, how's the saxophone wired up?" "Oh yes, it's just a DI out of my pedal board."
Yes,
That's a bit rare.
Yeah, no, that's.
I'm sure I'm not the only person who does it, but
I think we get quite a big sound for the for a 5-piece. I think we generate quite a big sound. And it's quite a full sound. It surprises me sometimes just how big it can sound. And I think that some other ska bands might be quite surprised at what we can do. And you start listening to other ska bands, and so we could get a keyboardist, but then we can't. You become a 5, 6, 7-piece band. You start to become more sort of too expensive. You've got to start charging more. You've got more mouths to feed. And B, like you get a pub like the Bellevue. No, it's
you just don't fit in there.
It's not the biggest, and you just can't get in there anymore.
Yeah,
so we can sort of get into those smaller pubs that maybe some of the bigger ska bands can't do, which is good for us.
I think the thing as well is what we try and do is, as Colin said, there are certain iconic bits in there. For example, It Must Be Love has to have that keyboard start. I mean, you can't do it any other way. But there's other songs where where things have been overdubbed on the actual records, and you have to pick out the bits that people remember.
Mm.
It's that people are expecting, and when you've done that, you've achieved your aim, because then people don't notice that maybe, or there's a bit of keyboard missing there, or there's something else missing there, because you've picked out the bits that they want, that they remember from the record, and that's been quite fun. Is working out which bits to leave out as much as which bits to leave in.
I mean, as you were saying with the audience, I mean, I think there's a very much case of like your Joe Public, it's a madness. Madness just goes down so well. But for the more hardcore ska fans, they prefer the specials and the beat stuff, we tend to find. But it's very hard to say, well, this song's going to go down well tonight and this song isn't, because it's going to be so different from one night to the next.
Yeah. Cool. And just to end on, it's what's next for you guys, and where can people follow you to stay up to date? So I know you've got gigs galore, so if you want to plug some of those coming up.
Yep, we're pretty busy. I mean, basically, we're on Facebook, we're on Lemon Rock, we're on Bands in Town. So anyone who's keen to come and see us, they can go and have a look us up on there. There's videos and pictures on there as well, so they can see what we do. With regards to gigs, you said it's going out in July, didn't you? So we've got a couple of sort of mini festivals. We're going to be at the Festival in
6th.
Yofa 6th of July, yeah. We're doing the Farringdon Folly Fest shortly after that. I don't have the dates on me to hand. The dates.
Hang on, I've got the list here, just to me.
So we've got Folly Fest on the 14th of July, and then
so we're
a bit of a break, and then we've got a couple of ones.
We've got coming up. Obviously, this is going out later. But we've got the Bell and Princess Elizabeth next Saturday. Then we were at Dashwood Roadhouse the following Friday. 6th of July, Oxfordshire Yeoman, the Yo Fest or Yo Fest. 14th, Folly Fest. Then 17th of August, we're at Red Lion in Eynsham. Then we're back for the Bell at Princess Risborough on the 18th of August for Belfast. Then Kidlington, Kingsley, O'Neill's, Oxford. Next time we're kind of back this way. George and Dragon in Chesham in November. Bellevue in November as well. Mad Squirrel in Wickham. And then I think we're probably down at Hedser in Bourne End in December. We're just waiting to confirm that. But there's a lot of gigs in between that perhaps a bit further away over the Oxford way. So we're split between the two. But as Colin said, you can pick them up on our website. There's lots of stuff there, and lots of videos and stuff. I mean, we had some great pictures and videos from Whitney last week, and there was some good stuff from the Bellevue when we did it in December as well. Yeah. So lots to see. We're on YouTube as well, and
Cool.
Big thank you to Nick and Colin from the Skadinals for joining me. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is the Skadinals with their version of Baggy Trousers.
Thank you.
stand the death of the dream, or you and me. How can you watch my heart beat, or don't tell me to stop believing in, or you and me. You light the thorns in my soul, oh, I swear I'll never stop loving you.
That was No More the White Horse by Hogarth's Wolf, and before that we had Baggy Trousers by the Skadinals. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Ilk Shed now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review.
The Libertines, a CD I got from one of the Wickham charity shops. I remember seeing the Libertines on TV. They were being produced by Mick Jones of The Clash, which was a large part of the story. I did listen to their first album, Up the Bracket, and I got the impression they were a band with lots of ideas that they had yet to master playing. A style of two-guitar indie that became the Arctic Monkeys thing. It all sounded a bit shambolic and not in a good way. Then it all became a soap opera with drugs and supermodels. Pete Doherty stole from Carl Barrett and the two were hardly talking, yet they released a great single, Don't Look Back Into the Sun. Despite liking the single, I don't think I took much further notice. They split and Pete Doherty formed an even more shambolic outfit who were almost like a Libertines tribute, whereas Carl Barrett formed a much more disciplined and musical outfit. But I have a friend from the Open Mic Salate group that kept us sane in lockdown, and he said I should do a piece on the Libertines. I found this CD of their second album in a charity shop and I had no excuse not to listen to it. I can now see what they were trying to do. Since the Beatles, there has been a standard lineup with bass, drums, lead guitar and rhythm guitar. It became the indie blueprint, but Doherty and Barrett at times are both playing lead lines, only not in a Thin Lizzy disciplined harmonious way, but more in a Captain Beefheart Magic Band way. Sometimes they complement each other, sometimes they seem to be in a battle with each other. This might well be intentional, bearing in mind that the album starts with the song You Can't Stand Me Now, a song about their relationship. And the album ends with a song called What Became of the Likely Lads, an appropriate sitcom reference. Two characters who grew apart, played by two actors who famously fell out with each other. The album is packed with quirky, catchy songs that take unexpected turns to changes in rhythm and style. They trade the singing off each other in the same way as they swap guitar licks. Its only fault is that it does not contain the non-album single Don't Look Back Into the Sun. The Libertines, their self-titled second album.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to the Skadinals for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. It all helps. And if you want to get involved in the show, perhaps you've got some music to share or you would like to be interviewed, feel free to reach out to me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is Twangling Jack Ford with his new tune, Strained Metaphor for Love. I'll catch you next week.
An eternity ago, effectively in limbo, staring at the phone, floundering in midair, clinging on to hope, precariously balanced on the high tide rope of love. To be careful what you say and what you do, like holding on to something in case it follows through, trudging through a slough of despond, running on an empty tank, hanging around with pirates and forced to walk the plank of love. That I'm looking for are just beyond my reach, like waiting for the tide to turn while stranded on the beach. The waves of pure emotion lapping at the shore, summing up my